Every company has a vision. At the heart of your mission, at the heart of your vision is your customer. If you serve your customer first and try and make profit second, don't get me wrong, you still need to make a profit.
Yes.
But if you're focused on driving value to your customer is going to build that network effect for you.
Are you a corporate escapee and wasting valuable time attempting to figure challenges out on your own? Well, this podcast is for you. We bring you firsthand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day. We get real with no corporate BS. And now, over to your host, Paul Higgins.
Hello and welcome to Corporate Escapees. Our guest today is someone who's worked in both government and private industry. He talks about consulting and the traps to avoid, and that comes from real first-hand experience. He goes over business agility and how it applies to businesses of all size. It's an absolute masterclass. And he also talks about his personal mission and also provides enormous takeaways. So what I'll do now is hand you over to Evan Leybourn from Business Agility Institute. Welcome, Evan Leybourn from Business Agility Institute to the Corporate Escapee podcast, brought to you by Build, Live, Give. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here.
Excellent. So what I'd love you to do is just start with something your family or friends would know about you that we wouldn't.
That's a good question. I think one of my personal traits that my family and friends know is that I'm a reader, and I read a lot of books. I have over 2,000 books at home. I actually just went and bought my latest bookshelf to hold that in. In fact, actually, once upon a time, I was a software programmer. Now that's going back 10 years. So I wrote myself a little app to catalog my books, which is, sadly, I have to admit, probably one of the most popular things I've ever written when I was a software developer. But yes, I have many, many books and I read all the time.
Great. And how do you find the time? A lot of people say, look, I've got lots of books, but I never read them. How do you find the time to read them?
Look, if you asked me a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I would have said you make the time. It's a little bit before bed and everything else. Now, sadly, I have fallen into the trap of I do not read much anymore. My timing and just with the new business and everything, reading is one of those things that I think I have sacrificed, and to my detriment, I have sacrificed it, but I think I have.
Yeah, look, I was similar to you, and I moved quite a bit, so I found it really cumbersome to move my books all the time. So I went into podcasting and audiobooks, which, is a whole nother journey. But I found it last time we moved, it was a lot easier. And I just listen to 2 or 2.5 times speed now when I'm doing other activities, and I'm still getting the knowledge, but I'm not having to lag around the physical book. So that's just what I've evolved into.
Oh, look, it's I wish I could do that. And I moved from Australia to Singapore, and then from Singapore back to Australia, and 2,000 books went me in both directions.
Wow.
It was not a pretty sight, but there have been days when it's like, I should just get ebooks of all of these, but I have a small child and I want her to grow up surrounded by books. So it's kind of important to have those physical books around nonetheless.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And look, I know you had a fantastic career in both government and private practice and worked for some amazing brands like BHP, IBM, etc. But why don't you just tell us a little bit about your corporate escapee story?
Yeah, so it goes back quite a few years. I have started a number of different businesses over the time. My first consultancy was called Looking Glass Solutions, and that was in Canberra, Australia. That was 2003, I think it was. I ran that for about 5 years, grew to about 15 staff, and had a great time, learned a lot, but more importantly, I think I learned what not to do when running your business.
And what was that, Evan?
It was actually all about, there's 1,000 things that we did wrong, but the biggest mistake I made was structural at the very beginning, and that was about pricing. Right. So I actually started Looking Glass. Oh, now this is going back a decade and more than 15 years, 16 years. Mm-hmm. I started it because I was working for Australian government, and I was seeing all these little consultancies come in, and they're doing a terrible job. And I just sort of said, I can do it better, and I can do it cheaper, because these guys are charging a lot of money for something that I can do a better job about. So arrogantly, it's like, all right, let's go off and do that. Now, the problem is, I, of course, very young, very naive, didn't realize that there's a reason consultancies charge premium rates, and that is you've got to run a bench, you've got to do business developments and all that other stuff. So structurally, we were unsound just from a pricing standpoint from day one. Now, we lasted 5 years and word of mouth was great, and we did some great, and our clients loved us. But 2008 comes around and that's the end of us. Structurally pricing.
Right. Great point.
So fast forward, I joined the government again. I stick with there for a couple more years, get completely sick of that, and then hang up my shingle as a consultant again. Do that for a number of years, never intending to build a large organization, always that sort of individual consulting, advisory. Did a lot of work overseas, traveling to Singapore and Malaysia, the Philippines. Lots of travel, loved to travel. And just working with some great companies for a little bit of time, some advisory, some strategy, some training. And a couple of years ago, joined IBM. They sort of gave me an offer I could not refuse. And it was an interesting opportunity. And once again, I don't think the corporate life is for me, because lasted there a couple of years. And then it's like, all right, time to move and do something else, which is sort of where I am today, which is with the Business Agility Institute. And I'll be honest, I've done the consulting thing now, and it's not what I find, it's not where my passion lies. So now we've built this professional association. We have members in 33 countries. I'm never going to make my millions this way, but I've never had more job satisfaction in my life.
Brilliant. Well, we'll definitely dig into that in the build section in a moment, but just take us through, it was a roller coaster, and I know you went back and forth, but what was some of the key learnings or the key support that you got as you went through that?
Look, I would say you've got to surround yourself by amazing people. They don't have to be employees, but they have to be near you. Obviously, my family and my wife has been hugely supportive of me, my time, the months where I didn't earn any money, and also just the travel and everything else. Mm-hmm. But there is a wealth of knowledge out there, and people want to help. I always say that give me someone with passion or give me someone with ego and I can use that, right? Give me someone with skill and you know what? That's actually not as useful as you might think. Don't get me wrong, skill's important, but passion, I'll use that any day. And ego, I can always use someone's ego.
So tell me a little bit more about the ego part. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so perhaps if I just go back a step and just explain a little bit about what we do as the Institute. So as a professional association, we're a think tank. We're a research organization. So we spend a lot of time providing to the community, I hate the word, but I'll use it, thought leadership around what we call business agility. And this is new ways of companies to work. Now, business agility is a new concept. Technically it's been around for quite a while, but it's gained prominence quite recently. So we have surrounded ourselves by a community of people who are trying to be part of this business agility community, but in a consulting space. All of these consultants, all of these thought leaders, they want to be heard. They want to be seen. And if you can give someone a platform to be heard and to be seen, then they will bend over backwards to help you. Right? Now for us, this is important because we publish our research free of charge. We don't charge for any of that. So we need these thought leaders and we need their insights. And we do that by trading on that ego, trading on their desire for reputation.
Great. And what have you learnt about running, a community? I'll call it a community like this. What have you learnt other than what you just mentioned then, which I think is great, but what else have you learnt?
I think it's the biggest thing I've learned is that the fastest, and this is going to sound counterproductive, but the fastest way to scale a business is by doing things that aren't scalable. So we did not start with systems and tools in place to handle thousands of members. I literally would send out customized emails to people. I would pick up the phone and I would talk to them. I would do everything that all those business books says. If you want to scale a business, then you need to do this and invest in these systems and simplify and streamline. It's like, no, I went the opposite. I want to build a personal relationship with these people. I want them to know who we are and why we're doing this. So if you start your business, don't start by doing all the scaling stuff. Start by doing all the customer stuff, and then scale only as you need to. And trust me, you will need to before too long.
Yeah, and look, I think Airbnb, if you listen to any of the Masters of Scale podcasts with Reid Hoffman, I think, there's a great interview there by the Airbnb guys that they talked about that. And as far as the platform for you, how do you sort of drive traffic to the platform other than people referring you, like you said? But how else do you drive traffic to the institute?
It's a network effect. So we have a mission, and every company has a mission. Every company has a vision. At the heart of your mission, at the heart of your vision is your customer. Now, if you serve your customer first and try and make profit second, don't get me wrong, you still need to make a profit. Yes. Right? But if you're focused on driving value to your customer is going to be that sort of, your customer is going to build that network effect for you. Now, for us as a professional association, as a research organization, it's about people seeing the value that we provide and going, hey, listen to this. You've got to pay attention. Here's this article or this paper or this conference you've got to come. If we'd started by focusing on, okay, how do we optimize for revenue and so forth? How do I make my first million? Then those customers would not care about us. They would not, they would see us as, oh, that's okay. Their marketing machine is slick. They'll sell their own stuff, right? They're not going to help us. But looking a bit scrappy, looking a bit, don't get me wrong, professional and like there's value here, but make it feel like there's value in that share, that there's value in suggesting that other people take part. Make them feel like they're doing you a favor. And that I think goes also to that ego thing. People like to help, right? And if you're doing the right thing, if you're doing it for the value, the customer value, then they will help.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And how did you know what was right to launch in the first place? So, obviously you've got a lot of experience in this area, but, how did you go out and find what your ideal client was really looking for in an institute?
Look, we started this organization because there was a need, because there was a hole. I've started companies before, and there's one startup that I founded because I wanted to create a startup. It lasted all about 3 months. We made no money. We spent a lot of money, and it was like, okay, that was a bad idea. But we did that the wrong way. We said, we want to do a startup. We didn't say, we see that the market needs something. Now, for us, it was very obvious. There's a lot of snake oil. There's a lot of people trying to sell their services, but there was no trust in the system. So we saw that there was this lack of trust, and we said, okay, we can build something that is a trusted nexus. And we'll work with all the consultancies. We'll work with all these organizations and these management consultants, whether it's big, like 100,000, 200,000 people, or small, like 1 or 2 people. We'll work with them, and we will show what trust looks like so their clients understand that this domain is valuable and important. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of what got us going and what got us started.
Great. And the next 3 years, what's the next 3 years for Business Agility Institute?
I'll be honest, I don't know. And I don't need to know. We have a mission, we have a vision, and all companies should have a vision of what they want to achieve, the value they bring to their customers. How we get there, what we look like on that journey, that'll change month by month. Right? My vision of 2019, right, back in 2018, is different to what I'm doing today. And if I had tied myself to the plan or that idea of what we were going to be, right, I'd be out of business right now, because that's not how business works. I know anyway.
No, look, I think it's so powerful. And as I was asking the question, I could sort of preempt what response from an agility professional would say. And I think it's so right. And if I look at my corporate background, similar to yours, big blue chip companies, but it was, you spent 3 months of the year planning and doing a budget. And then, the second after that, it was out the window and it was just a crazy waste of PowerPoint time. So I completely get you. But if you're a consultant listening to it now, what's the practical way that they can, have a North Star, but also be agile? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
No, absolutely. That's exactly what we talk about. So there's a couple of key elements at play. So the first is put the customer at the center. So there's a great quote: "Profit is like the air. We do not live to breathe, but we do need to breathe in order to live." So if your organization is profit driven, and I'll be honest, look at your KPIs, look at your any report you give to an investor, right? Does it focus only on the money? Right? In that case, you're profit driven. And I've seen salespeople in consultancies, whether it's 5 people or 500,000 people, sub-optimize for their commission, sub-optimize so they hit that KPI. Literally, I've seen them go, "Hey, I'll knock $1 million off this contract if you sign this quarter." Right? Now, if they'd waited 4 days, right, the company would have made an extra $1 million. Right? But because they're incentivized by the financials, it means that that's what you're going to get. You're going to get the behaviors that optimize for the financials. And you just need to look at the bloody the Royal Commission into Banking here in Australia, and you'll see what happens when you optimize for financials above optimizing for the customer. So put your customer at the heart. Still need to make money, still need to make a profit. Vitally important. You'll be out of business if you don't. But listen to them, know what they need. And there's 1,000 ways to do that, but just in principle, focus. The second person you've got to listen to are the people on the ground. Now, if you're a consultant of 1 or 2, then you are on the ground. It means that you're the one listening to the customer and listening to everyone else around you. But if you have people who work with you, right, then you're 1 step removed, maybe 2 steps, maybe 3 steps, maybe 10 steps removed from the customer. And it means that the decisions, the strategic decisions that you make it's this game of telephone, right? Where what you hear has filtered through so many layers that by the time it gets to you, what you're making decisions on is false. Right? So go to the customer, listen to the people on the ground, talking to the customer every single day. Right? And in some of these organizations, strategic decisions are made by the first line people. Right? It's called emergent strategy, where I'm a doer in the organization and I have authority to make strategic decisions. We still have a vision. We still have a North Star, right? Because I can't make a decision that's going to change the direction of the organization. That does come from the top. But that emergent strategy of how we get there, that's my job to figure out.
Brilliant. I think that's so powerful. And to be honest, that's one of the things that I love working in the Coke system was they had, think local, act local, think global, act local. Mm-hmm. And I think we never termed it agile, but in a way that was because, 1 minute you'd be talking about a vision for the corporate 2020 or whatever it was back in the day. And then the next minute you'd be out talking to a customer who's a milk bar owner telling you what was wrong with the product. So I think that's brilliant. And I think that was embedded in me, but I do see people lose that. So I think that's great. And any other things that you've got as advice here? I know that's 2, but any others?
Look, it depends on the size of the organization. So
if you pick more smaller, I suppose, in this instance?
Yeah. So focus on growth, not efficiency. So it's if you look at, if as an organization, maybe you're struggling, right? And it's easy to go, where do I cut? Where do I cut costs? But the problem with cutting costs is that you are actually cutting your ability to adapt and react. So what you need to do is invest in growth. Now, yes, if you are inefficient, cut the costs. But we get lazy. Cutting costs is easy. Growing a business is hard. So if we're struggling, we'll do the easy thing when we should have been doing the hard thing to begin with.
Great. And if you've got a couple of key tips on someone on how to best grow a consulting business, what would they be?
Oh, God. I think I'd be a much richer person if I had the magic wand or the silver bullet for that one. Look, consulting is interesting because, and I'm going to be a bit harsh here. In some ways, it's a bit of a pyramid scheme, right? So if you are an individual consultancy or a consultancy of 2 or 3 or 4 people, your revenue is fundamentally limited by your ability to work. It's time for money. Yes. Now, as you grow, as you employ, maybe you get to 5 people, 6 people, 7 people, suddenly your revenue is now based on the people under you, right? And their ability to work. You take a small percentage of that. Now, that, like any pyramid scheme, fails to scale at a certain point. And it's why, as an organization, consultancies need to have like multiple facets in the market. There needs to be products that are unique. There needs to be intellectual property, which is unique to that organization, but also in demand. I have seen organizations create intellectual property which are literally just rebadging something else that's in the market. And yes, they spent a month creating all the slide decks and the brands for this fancy new framework or model, but it was a waste of everyone's time because it doesn't actually address what customers need. Right? But this is where that multifaceted approach is. Listen to your customers, put them at the center, figure out what they want, figure out what they need to be valuable, focus on that, and then build multiple business streams around delivering related but independent services and products to those customers. The sad fact is that sounds all well and good, but the actual effort to achieve that is next to impossible. So there's a really great quote by actually, I thought it was Henry Ford, but I just checked. It's actually Thomas Edison. Opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work. And that's actually a very key point in everything that we do. It's the reason there's no silver bullet is that to grow your business, you have to work really hard to grow your business. And it's going to be unique for you and your organization. Excellent.
And the last question in this section is your biggest challenge. So what's the biggest challenge you face with growing Business Agility Institute at the moment?
Breaking out of the echo chamber. And I think this is true for any organization, whether it's a consultancy or for us, a professional association. So I talk to you, I talk to other people, and they go, yeah, this makes sense. They get it because they've grown up with these ideas, this think global, act local, and it's in their head. But when I say it to you, you nod and go, yeah, that makes sense. Right? Absolutely. Why aren't all organizations doing this? But our challenge is to reach the people who aren't already hooked into this train of thought. Likewise, if I was a consultancy, it's breaking out of that local network of customers and clients who when we work together, it's like they're referring me to the same people. Right? So it's breaking out of that local community, that echo chamber. And that is definitely the hardest part. And that's where we're to your early question, my plan for 2019, 12 months ago, is very different now, because my plan for 2019 today is, how do I break out of the echo chamber? Right? How do I reach those other people? And that now requires investment in things like branding and marketing and advertising to reach those communities and those people who I don't have any other way of accessing, because they're not part of that first or second screen network.
Excellent. And I'm assuming a podcast is one way of delivering tactically upon that.
It is, absolutely. Though it also depends on who your audience is. But the challenge here is it's that you don't know what you don't know. So I know who my audience is. I know who my first degree network is. I know who their second degree network is. When we're reaching out beyond that, it's this sea of millions and billions of people, and you're casting, and I'm going to mix my metaphors here, but like, you're casting this net or this fishing line, trying to hook and get into another sort of community somewhere and make a dent. But you're going to hit some communities and it will fall flat. Your messaging, they'll just be ignored. It won't be listened. And there might be another community just next door who would have listened, but you don't know that. And it's why some companies go bankrupt just doing sales and marketing, because purely by luck, and this is the sad fact of business, is that no matter what strategy you have, there is an element of luck to this. If you don't luck into that right community, then you'll be out of business straight away.
Yeah, look, and I think that's, so often I think timing, they often say, is the number one reason why a startup's successful, and often that timing is that fortuitous conversation you have with someone, and it takes a completely different path. Look, before we go into the next section, which is the live section, I'd love to help people to leverage their most important asset, which is time. So if you go to blgdownload.com, you can get 3 killer tips. And also, having spent 26 years in sales, 18 of them at Coca-Cola, I know a few things about sales CRMs. We use Copper. It's a great platform. It integrates right into your Gmail inbox, and it is super easy to use. So to find out more about that, go to buildlivegive.com/resources. So the next section is the live section, as I said, Evan. So what's some daily habits that help you to be successful?
So you touch on time, and that's the key, because the time is the one thing you can't buy. You can't ever get more time. So my daily habits is all about time. So I wake up at about 5 o'clock, between 5 and 5:30 every day. I've got an hour to an hour and a half to get my day ready before my daughter wakes up. So she always wakes up at 7 a.m. So in that time, I go through all my emails that have come in. We're an international organization, so America is active, and I have 20, 30, 40 emails easily that have come in since I went to bed. There are, I will go through, I make sure that I email 5 to 7 new people every morning, right? People who I haven't spoken to for 12 months, right? And this is where CRMs are very helpful. I go into my CRM and it's like, here's 5 people I haven't spoken to for 12 months. Hey, how are you? I'm not selling them anything. I just want to keep that relationship alive. Right? So I'll email those people. I'll also then plan my day. I will spend 10 minutes and I will look at everything and I'll go, what's one big thing I'm going to do today? Right? And for me, a big thing is about 3 hours work, and I try and block out that 3-hour block. And that one big thing is important, because if I can make that happen, it means that I feel productive, I feel engaged, and I can move on. From about 7 a.m., my daughter wakes up. So 7 to 9 is daughter time. I don't work. I don't look at my emails. Everything is shut down. It is just purely for her. Then I drop her at school. 9 to 5, that's my work day. And then it's just, you just do your normal stuff. And for me, I try not to get too distracted. I get so many new emails. I try and shut off my email, and except for maybe 3 times a day when I do check it. I'm not as good at that as I possibly should do. I do something called Inbox Zero, which allows me to keep on top of that email. And that's it. Very simply, it means that every time I look through my email, I either delete it, delegate it, defer it, or do it. And it means that I can pretty much get through my entire inbox usually within about half an hour. So it gets into empty. Now, that's not always the case. Obviously, sometimes there are more complicated things in there, but that is certainly the goal. Pick up my daughter, right? So from 5 o'clock to about 8 o'clock is her time. And that's sacrosanct, right? I try not to have meetings. I try not to take calls during that time. I help her with her homework because I want to be there for her. I travel enough that when I'm physically home, that I don't want to damage that relationship. I want to build the strength in that relationship. And then after about 8 o'clock when she's in bed, she's 6 years old, so she goes to bed early. Yes. And then it's depending on the day and what's going on. I either do a little bit more work until 10 or spend time with my wife.
Excellent. And that's a perfect segue into the support your wife's given you. So when she's listening, because she's listening right now, what would you like to say to her about the support she's given you?
Oh, look, it's absolutely invaluable. It would be impossible to start any business without that level, like a huge level of support from your partner, both financially, right? The weeks and the months where the clients aren't there, and for time, right? Looking after my daughter when I've got to travel or I've got to work late for whatever reasons. There's something due tomorrow. And just being there to talk to and go, hey, I've had a frustrating day. There you go. I was about to swear, but no, I'll be PC. I've had a frustrating day, and just there to listen. And now the flip side is you've got to be there for them as well. You can't just be a sponge and sort of dump everything onto them. You've got to listen to their problems and be there for them. So there's got to be that quid pro quo. Otherwise, well, the relationship completely fails.
All right, well, the next section is the give section. So what's a community or a charity that you're passionate about and why?
Well, I think that's a cheat for me because I run a professional association. The community is my community. It's literally, I resigned from IBM solely to help this community, the business agility community. So that's a cheating answer, I think.
That is. And the one I expected, and I'm glad you gave it. So the last one is the action section. So what I'll do is ask you some questions and get some rapid fire responses. So the first one is your top 3 productivity tips.
All right. Number 1, just do it. Right? If there's something to be done, just do it. If you have so many things you don't know where to start, just pick a random number, count that many, and do that one. If you don't want to do it, go to the next one and do that. Number 2, inbox zero. Right? Seriously, email is, I hate it. It is terrible. It has destroyed many, many careers. But it is a part of it. So find a technique that allows you to get on top of it, because the last thing you want to do is to respond late to a critical message. Third one is use your brain chemistry. Right? So use that dopamine that's in your brain and make your brain feel happy when you achieve something. All right? Write things down physically on paper. All right? When you've done something, rip off that piece of paper, tear it up, throw it in the bin. Get that physical movement attached to the sense of achievement, and let your brain trigger all those chemicals to go, that was good.
Brilliant. And some favorite apps or software that you use to run the Institute and also your personal life?
So I am surrounded by Post-it notes. I'm very old school, but obviously you do need to start going electronically, and we have employees around the world, so because we're a distributed organization.
Yes.
So the tool I love that I use a lot is called Toodle-Do. It's a to-do tracking tool. One of the reasons I love it is that you can set up recurring tasks, which is very helpful. It's like this. When I click done, make this task come back tomorrow or in a week or in a month. And it has habits, which allows you, so every day I have these sort of 7, actually I think it's like 9 habits now, sorry. So in the morning between that 5 and 7, I go through those habits and it's like, have I inbox zero? Tick, yes. Did I email 7 people? Tick, yes. Did I thank people from the meetings I had yesterday? Tick, yes. And just having those habits every single day is very, very helpful. And as a tool, it's just, I won't say it's the easiest to use of the task management tools, but it does everything that I wanted in the way I wanted.
Great. And I was normally ask people books, but I think given you've got 2,000, that's a risk. So I'll ask you podcasts. What are some podcasts that you're listening to currently?
Look, I'll be honest. I don't. I am a reader, like Deming and Drucker. I go back old school. No, actually, no, that's not true. There's one video series that I do watch every time, and it's called Kurzgesagt. It's this nice little animation on YouTube that come out once a month about science and technology, and it's just a really compelling watch. I think that's probably the only thing I actually watch on a regular basis.
Great. Well, I'll get the spelling post and we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I've just made a mockery of how to spell it. So the last question...
I made a mockery of pronouncing it as well.
I'll call it even. The last question is, what impact do you want to leave on the world?
I'm going to give you a slightly slower answer on this one. So when I was growing up, and this is going to peg my age, there was a cartoon called Pinky and the Brain. And in this cartoon, there were two mice, right? Pinky and the Brain. And there was at the end, they were trying to take over the world. And so at the end of every show, it was, what are we going to do tomorrow night, Brain? Same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world. And I don't know, a young, impressionable teenage Evan always wanted that, let's try and take over the world. But I've reached this point now where that's what I'm doing. Right? It's not mad scientist, it's more mad businessman. Right? But as a consultant, I was reaching one company at a time. Through the research and through everything that we're doing, I'm touching 1,000 companies at a time. I am ambitious. I am arrogant enough to actually think that, you know what, I'm going to be able to touch hundreds of thousands of companies around the planet and show them that there are better ways of working that are more engaging, that are more empowering for their staff, that are better for their customers, and are more fun, better places to work. And I really want nothing less than to change the world.
Excellent. I think that's an amazing North Star. And I think, that coupled with your agile approach, I'm sure you'll be successful. And people can find out more about Evan at LinkedIn profiles. So we'll put that in the show notes. Also the website, Business Agility Institute. And also I know Evan's also been an author of a great book directing the agile organization. So we'll put all of those links in the show notes. But Evan, I just wanted to thank you for your time and effort in coming on the show today.
No worries. Thank you, Paul. Absolutely delightful. I love listening to your show. So thank you very much for inviting me.
There are so many takeouts from that brilliant podcast with Evan, but for me, there's top three. So the first one is customer first and also go from the ground feedback or get feedback from the ground. I think that was really, really powerful. The next is non-scalable activities first. Don't try to systemize too early. And the third one was growth, not efficiency, which is linked to the second. So I think three brilliant tips from Evan. You can get the key learnings and the show notes at buildlivegive.com/podcast. And also, if you're a corporate escapee and would love to share your story, email support@buildlivegive.com. Please take action from today and make a positive impact on the world.
Thank you for listening to the Corporate Escapees podcast, brought to you by Build, Live, Give. If you would like to join a community of like-minded peers, please visit www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening and be brave.